What I'm going to talk about today is urbanization and whether urbanization is a disaster or a panacea in India. In fact, first and foremost, I thought I should really understand the meaning of these two words. And what does it really mean? And how can I actually reflect about urbanization in India depending on these two words? So the first thing was that disaster is something which is absolutely abysmal. It is a catastrophe. And without a doubt, urbanization is a catastrophe in India. In fact, how many of you are from Gurgaon and you will realize that it's an urban hellhole? In fact, the biggest hell in the world is called Gurgaon. In fact, if you really look at this whole perspective, the question is, how do we set things right? But the next one, when you talk about Panacea, is urbanization the solution for all ills that actually exist in the world? Probably not. Maybe yes. This is what we would actually explore as we actually move ahead. This is the battle for survival that we fight every day. Today, when I was coming from Gurgaon to Delhi or to Faridabad, it took me about 1 hour, 30 minutes. But on the other side of the road, I could see a traffic jam which was close to about 6 kilometers long. And why does that actually happen? This is something very interesting. It's a reflection of what is really happening on the roads. It's a reflection of our attitudes. It's a reflection of how we actually behave. Quite interestingly, I always ask this question. If this room catches fire, then what happens? There would be a stampede, right? There would be a stampede here. Because we would be reflecting a true Indian attitude of actually crushing each other. That is what actually happens on the roads. So if you really look at it, the road behavior is actually about something very interesting. It's something about what we call as individual rationality leading to collective irrationality. It's actually a complete construct or an economic construct that we see. People will just come from this side or whatever, and we would actually see a mess happening. And it happens every day. In fact, today in the morning, I was actually looking at or hearing the news, and I found that there were 6 traffic jams that the people were talking about. Interestingly, I also got stuck in a traffic jam about 3 days back for about 4 hours, and that was a mess. So if you really look at it, this means that there is a whole huge loss that we actually face every day. In fact, in a place like Delhi, we lose close to about 1,200 man-years because of traffic jams every day. That is a huge mess that we are actually living in. So if you really talk about a country which is growing, which is talking about youth, what do we actually do with this? We need to set this problem right. In fact, this is something very interesting, again, that actually got into our newspapers some time back. There is potty in our food. In fact, this was the headline in Mail today. And I was super excited with it. I said, okay, now this is wow. We are all so good, so healthy, even in spite of this. In fact, all of you have got immune to typhoid. Go anywhere in the world, eat anything, and you're going to survive. Beautiful. All the other guys who are from the West have to take typhoid injections. We are all attuned to it. So a lot of you out here have to just understand that this is absolutely amazing. You go to some place like Kake Ka Dhaba, it will be something wonderful. You will actually taste potty in it, right? So that's what it is. This is exactly what we see. This is Bhagalpur in Bihar. In fact, Bhagalpur is one of the most prominent towns. If you remember, there was a movie made out on the riots in Bhagalpur. And this is a very interesting reflection of how we actually clean our stuff. This is filth in Delhi. Beautiful. Absolutely. This is what we actually love. And this is present-day Delhi, in spite of what you call as Arvind Kejriwal, or despite of him. But then that's a separate issue. This is about sustainability. And if you talk about this country, how do we set things right? How do we really look at a sustainability issue when we have a mess like this? When you talk about health, how do you talk about health? There are some certain tragedies that are waiting to happen. In fact, as of today, more than about the tons and tons of kids who die every day. In fact, there was this earthquake that actually happened in Nepal. The number was that something like close to 5,000 people died there in a single day. Incidentally, in India, close to about 5,000 kids die every week because of filth, because of waterborne diseases. And this is actually happening within the cities and within the villages of this country. Urban sprawl. This is what urbanization is all about for us. We live in concrete jungles. In fact, we are all cutting our trees today. In fact, people who are actually living here, or people who live in Delhi, their favorite pastime is to actually kill the green. Their favorite pastime is to actually mess up the environment. All of you who are sitting here would be responsible for it in some way or the other. The youth itself, you do not have the courage to tell your parents, please do not cut trees. In fact, the favorite pastime of your parents would be to actually annex the trees which are there in the garden or whatever. And that's what they do. This is the rivers we have. This is like the Satluj or the Bias that we actually see. And this is what happens in all the cities in the country. If you really talk about Delhi, Delhi is a very interesting mess. If you want to go out boating on a weekday, when it is actually raining, this is a wonderful environment. So all of you who are visiting from the west, please go out boating. It's something very mesmerizing. So you will just wonderfully see this. But then what is this a reflection of? This is actually a reflection of governance and bad governance in this country. A lot of people out here talk about or celebrate the wrong set of heroes. A lot of people will criticize me for saying it, but the India's mess is not because of government, it is because of governance. And for the youth, I would like to tell this. In fact, these heroes that you celebrate are the IAS officers. They're the wrong set of heroes to celebrate because they are the reason for the mess in this country. Because 6,000 of them. So India needs another freedom, and that another freedom is actually going to come through when we change our governance system. But then this is a question or a topic of another talk. And this is a reflection of what we are. When you talk about cities, it's about individualistic behavior, without a doubt. We are becoming a society which is becoming fairly individualistic. We are not talking about people per se. A lot of us would want to think about it that we are the most society-driven people or a teamwork-driven country, but it is not true. Our God is also individualistic. It is within us. It's not outside. East and West are different that way as well. And it is a reflection of the whole idea of God that we actually have. It is about greed and corruption. When you talk about cities in this country, the cities in this country are becoming a big reflection of greed and corruption that we actually have. In fact, when you talk about Gurgaon or when you talk about Faridabad, what is it a reflection of? It is a reflection of greed and corruption that existed at multiple levels. And those multiple levels were either the government or the corporate. And how do we question this? Are we even questioning this whole situation? In fact, this is about the great Indian urban disaster. We never questioned. For the last 30 years, we have been sitting in our homes or sitting in our offices and not questioning. We are just accepting whatever is happening. So how many of you are willing to go out and talk about it? There were some young kids who were talking about some youth movement that they've started. Are you really even talking about starting a youth movement? Are you really looking at making a difference? In fact, when I talk about Gurgaon, this is exactly about three things. This is about urban hell that actually exists. In fact, it is the 476th worst place in this country. In fact, there was a list of cities that came out about a week back. Gurgaon is the 476th filthiest place, or in the ranking, so it's the worst city in the country. Lack of foresight. It is exactly about lack of foresight. In fact, Delhi is also about lack of foresight. You have this Rautula Rammarg, overbridge, which is about lack of foresight. But why are cities important? We are talking about this whole thing about disaster, but why are cities important? Cities are important for a couple of reasons. Because these are the places which are where innovation happens. This is where kids come together, this is where talent comes together and does something very interesting. When you have Palo Alto, or when you actually have, say, something like Boston or New York, it is about agglomerations which are very interesting. Similarly, when you talk about cities, it's about agglomerations where innovation happens. Gurgaon does have a certain level of innovation. Bangalore is a beautiful place for innovation that happens. It is about opportunities. It's about a better quality of life. A lot of times people think that when you are coming from a village, there is no better quality of life. It is incidentally wrong. For a simple reason, when somebody comes from the village and he goes to, say, a place like Dharavi, there is certainly a better quality of life that he actually gets because he gets better set of amenities. He's not getting those amenities in villages. So that means there is a certain positive benefit that happens, but we are just simply not looking at those positive set of benefits overall. They are creative hotspots. This is where creativity happens. This is where new set of ideas are happening. But now the debate is going to be, how do we actually push this creativity in the cities itself? How do we make kids look at innovation? How do we actually make kids move away from the whole idea of job seeking? Today, when I actually talk about creativity, what I see is that kids are talking about job seeking behavior rather than job creation behavior. So all of you out here who are in this program should be looking at an idea that we are going to be entrepreneurs for tomorrow. We are not going to be seeking jobs. All of you today should actually vouch or should actually take a vow. We will not take jobs. We will create wealth. When you are actually talking about appreciating people like Satya Nadella, they are the true entrepreneurs. They have done something out there. They've created jobs. You have people out there, Vinod Khosla and others. You need to do that. You need to be part of that whole thing. But then when you talk about cities, it's about land, labor, and capital. And when you talk about land, labor, and capital, that means you have to talk about how we really make our cities better. How do we actually reduce the productivity mess that we actually live in? How do we talk about labor? How do we create a talent pool which is exciting? How do we create a set of institutions which are inspiring? Where are the inspiring institutions today? What is the innovation that actually happens? In fact, when you talk about numbers, you'll be surprised that there was a time between 2000 to 2010 wherein certain set of universities in the United States were doing more number of patents than the whole country put together. So there was no innovation that was happening. And when Narayan Murthy says that all of you come out and kill him, or you actually just try to tell him that he's such a mess. But that's a reality. But we need to create a vision for our cities. Today, what we are seeing is that we do not have a vision for our cities. What the city needs to be standing for. What is Gurgaon all about? What is Delhi all about? People who are from Delhi will understand that Delhi is all about arrogance, right? So if you really want to change that, you have to be more humble. You have to actually leave that whole attitude of showing off. You have to really come down and work. What I see today is that youth is actually not really talking about how to create vision for the places where they actually live in. They're not wanting to get engaged in that. You need to go out and start getting engaged in these activities and make a difference for this country. If this country has to change, this country will change because of you, not because of people who are old hogs like me. We can actually talk about it, but the action is going to be with people like you. So it is about youth. It's about people who can make a difference. You have to go out and change things. And last two things, it's about a perspective. How do you actually look at things? In fact, if we start accepting everything the way it is, nothing will change. Change the perspectives that we actually have. And of course, what we need to say is challenge the status quo. This is what Steve Jobs had actually said. Go out, change the way things are, change the assumptions that you have, because assumption is the biggest dangerous thing that people do. Assumption is about us of you and me, nothing else, right? So change yourself, go out, and it is you who can actually make the difference in this country and make the difference to the cities. Thank you.
tGELF, leading the change.